It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. A 1964 graduate of Xavier High School in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rocky Bleier was a star running back for the University of Notre Dame and a part of their national championship team in 1966. After graduating from Notre Dame, he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers and played for the team for a single year after being drafted by the Steelers. He was then drafted a second time, but this time by the United States Army. He volunteered for duty in Vietnam, and 3 months into his tour there, his left leg was severely injured by a grenade explosion. While recovering in a hospital in Tokyo, Rocky was told that he would never play football again. But just after a year after sustaining these very serious injuries, he reported to training camp and began his effort to rejoin the legendary Pittsburgh Steelers. He spent 2 years trying to regain his position on the team and was even released by the Steelers at one point, but he never gave up. By 1974, Rocky had regained his position on the starting lineup and became a vital part of Super Bowl winning teams in 1974, 1975, 1978, and 1979, including a game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 13. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rocky Bleier.
Thank you. Thank you. John, thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be able to be here and to share this morning with all of you. I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, it's been a long time since you've had a speaker outside of the aviation industry to come and speak to you. So what does this speaker have in common with what you do? Well, as John had made mention, I grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is just in the shadows of the granddaddy of them all, Oshkosh, Wisconsin Air Show, and so I understood the impact that that air show had in that area, and having been there on many occasions just to see all those planes fly and parked and come in, and it was a great experience. Secondly, the relationship I also figured out last night between being in this industry and being in the football industry. Two things or several things we have in common. One, I think you both got to be a little crazy to be involved in what you do and what I do, and you have to like to drink. And so two things I think that I found out last night when I got here is that I wandered in the ICAS bar before I knew it was your bar. And I figured when you can get double martinis for the price of one, oh, I'm in the right place. And so the bartender shared with me the experience of all of you who've been there and here, and how wonderful he thought it was. The 40 years of air shows, the organization, it's a long time passing. And what had happened back those 40 years ago and where it is today, obviously, there's a lot of changes that have taken place. And part of the change is what we remember of that change. In the book River Horse, the author William Least-Heat Moon wrote that our physical components change every 7 years, so that our brains continuously pass memories off onto a complete stranger. Who we have been is just now a fellow ghostly traveler. If memory were total and complete, perhaps we would be one person from start to finish, but forgetfulness cuts us off from who we have been, so that hourly we are reborn. I tell you that in context and maybe even from your own perspective, at least for mine, that I may not be the same person that I was 43 years ago when I was walking the rice paddies in Vietnam, or 32 years ago when I last wore a uniform in the National Football League. But the highlights of those times are forever etched in my memory. What I've come to learn is that it's usually my audience that forgets who I am and how I single-handedly won those 4 Super Bowls for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you look at that period of time within our lives for those who have been here since the get-go and up to where we are today, a lot of opportunities have opened because we really live in a culture of opportunities and not necessarily a culture of entitlement. And that's based on the simple premise that as long as we have choices within our lives, and basically we are a free people, but with choice comes a responsibility. And that responsibility is one, to be informed, to know more about what is happening within your industry, within your communities, within your shows. And then secondly, have the courage to act on that information. So if we have choices, then basically we only have 2 choices. One is to be less than we're capable of being, to do less, to have less impact, to be less involved. Or secondly, is to do more, to be on top of your game, to be more involved, to be able to take your shows to a new height and to a new level. So if we have choices, then basically we only have one choice, and that is to be the best that we can be, no matter what we may do. But it raises for me the question of why, as we look around in our society. Why? Why is it that some people succeed in their task when others seem to fail? Why in the world of sports do some teams continuously win when others seem to lose? What then are those ingredients that allow us individually and collectively to reach that potential? Well, to answer that question, I'd like to tell you a story, although it would be my story, but I'd like you to listen to it from the point of view that we all have a story of how we got to where we are at this moment in time. Obviously, the roads that we've taken to get to this point have varied and different, but the lessons that we've learned are pretty universal. The ups, the downs, the successes, the failures, the barriers that we've all faced. Now, obviously, most of my life has been involved in the world of football on one level or another, and even though it's been my life and my focus and my passion, I've also come to realize, as you have, that there are some people who could care less about what is happening in the world of football. And some of those people may be sitting right in this audience this morning. But whether or not you like the game of football, you at least have to admit to yourself that that game today has become part of the fabric of our lives. I mean, think about it. As the season is winding down, whether it be high school or college, as we've gone through that, or on the professional level, it is a game that is on television 24 hours a day. It's in our local papers, radio talk shows. It becomes the topic of conversation within the workplace, within our homes. Some of us have played the game, friends have played the game, family has played the game, our kids have played the game. And football is much like life, if I can make that analogy. And why is that? Well, if you think about it, whether it be a game or a season, there's always a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. There's birth, there's life, there's death. And depending on how your team has performed, there may be a mourning period. And then there's a renewal. And we repeat that process week after week, And the season after season, and he creates one word, football does, much like life. And that one word is hope. God, I hope they can get it together this coming week. Oh, I hope they can get momentum. Oh, I hope we can win the remaining part of their games. God, I hope nobody gets hurt. I hope we can get to the playoffs. Oh, I hope we can get to the championship game. Oh, I hope my college team wins the bowl game. I hope we can get to the Super Bowl. And even if your team doesn't get to the Super Bowl, you hope the team you like the least beats the team you hate the most. And I was very fortunate for those years, as John had made mention, to play with that team in Pittsburgh. It now allows me to wear 4 Super Bowl rings, from Super Bowls 9 and Super Bowls 10, Super Bowls 13 and Super Bowls 14. Thank you very much. Do you know how many Steeler fans it takes to change a light bulb? Don't hurt yourself. The answer is 5. 1, obviously, to change the light bulb. The other 4, to talk about how great the 70s were. Anyway, from 74 and 75 and 78 and 79, 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, 2 against the Dallas Cowboys, and the 4th against the then LA Rams. But you also have to understand that having 4 Super Bowl rings poses a lot of problems to me, because it raises a myriad of questions no matter where I may go, much like I got from John, in all honesty, today, back in our little office space over there. And he goes, geez, Rock, I mean, in all honesty, you got 4 Super Bowl rings. Do you change them every day? I mean, how do you decide which one to wear? I mean, which one's better than the other one? Which one do you like more than the other one? Well, I have to tell you in all honesty that this one that I wear on my right hand from Super Bowl 13, the second time that we had played the Dallas Cowboys, is the one that I wear all the time, and for various reasons, which I won't necessarily bore you with. But the primary reason is because it happens to be the largest and gaudiest of all 4 of them. But you have to understand that every time that I wear these rings, I mean, for me, these rings truly are a symbol. And they're important if you think about it, as all symbols in our lives are important because they're really constant reminders of the successes that we've had, failures we've experienced, depths that we prevailed, heights we've achieved, of the constant barriers that we had to overcome to be able to get there. A constant reminder that getting to the top and becoming the best, or becoming number 1, or winning that championship, or going to that Super Bowl, just doesn't happen. But yet, it takes all those ingredients that we've come to learn in our lives. It takes hard work and dedication. It takes a commitment, and it takes a passion about what we do. But it also takes leadership and people and a vision and a belief system, ultimately shoved in a capsule that today, no matter what we may do, we love to call a team. And throughout our lives, we've heard many definitions of that word team. How about that acronym TEAM, together? Everyone achieves more. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we used that? Well, we understand that concept, but probably the best definition I heard came from, my head coach all those many years ago in Pittsburgh, Chuck Noll, who defined a team simply as this: a group of individuals coming together for a common purpose and a common goal. And along the way, we have our own responsibilities. Game of football is an example. Common purpose, play the game. Common goal, to win. Responsibilities, head coach, coaching staff. Get the right players, put them in the right position, train them, and then ultimately arm them with the best offense and defensive game plans. Players' responsibility, take the game plans, whether you like them or not, and execute them to the best of your ability. So that when you walk off that field and you come in the locker room, you got that one moment where you look at yourself in the mirror and you can honestly say, I did everything I could according to this plan. Because each and every one of you says that, then all the parts will come together as a whole, and that whole truly will be a victory. Individuals coming together for a common purpose and a common goal. So successful teams, like successful organizations or air shows, are really made up of two parts. The commitment of the individuals to their own responsibilities and to that of the organization, and thus the commitment of the organization in support of the individuals to achieve their goals. Two parts held together by a common glue called commitment and trust. For without that glue, obviously it will not adhere. For without that glue, those two sides will fall apart. So two things I'd like to explore. That commitment of the individual, organizational structure, and along the way, touch upon a couple subjects like success breeds success, which we all know, failure breeds failure. We're all formed by preconceived ideas, and as much as things change, you know, some things don't change. Let's start there. First time my teammates and I had the opportunity to play in our first Super Bowl. Super Bowl IX, as I'd made mention, all those many years ago, against the Minnesota Vikings. The largest man on the Vikings defensive line in this game weighed 265 pounds. The largest man in our offensive line weighed 255 pounds. As a matter of fact, our starting offensive guards, respectively, in this game weighed 217 and 214 pounds. Not even the size of a good, respectable high school football team in today's standards. Average salary in the NFL, $60,000 a year. Paying me $25,000 a year, but you know what? I knew I was going to make more money in those playoff games than I'd made all year long. Pretty big incentive if you come to think about it. Well, let's fast forward these many years later. The largest man in last year's Super Bowl weighed 368 pounds. Average offensive lineman in that game, 320 pounds. Average salary in the NFL, just read it in Time magazine, it went up $2.1 million, and they're going to make less than 10% of that in the playoff games that they play in. So as we've come to see and understand, things have changed. Players have gotten bigger and they've gotten faster, and because of that, strategies have changed offensively and defensively. But see, the one thing that has not changed in that game from its inception to today is that the game of football is still about what? It's still about basic fundamentals. It's still about blocking and tackling and running and throwing. It's about having a game plan and executing that game plan. It's about hard work, dedication, commitment. It's about having a passion. It's about leadership and people and a vision. It's about individuals coming together for a common purpose and a common goal. And that's what this whole association's about. That's what your air shows are about. Individuals coming together for a common purpose and a common goal. To be able to build on what you've had in the past, the reputations that you've had, that teamwork to bring forward. So, if football is a microcosm of our society, then what happens in the world of football happens in our lives. And what we like or don't like that is maybe happening on that field today is maybe what we like or don't like that is happening in our own society, and more importantly, in this association. For the game of football changed some years ago when free agency came into the marketplace. Now, the impact of that change didn't take effect right away, if you may remember. It never does. There's always a trickle-down effect. When do we become aware? When it affects us personally. In this case, it was 4 years after the decision when two expansion teams, just a little history, Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers, found themselves in the championship game of the respective divisions after being in existence for only 18 months. And it was at that moment in time that the perceptions and the expectations changed, first of all, by owners, and then secondly, by us, the fans. Why? Because the model used to be 5 years. You had 5 years as a new head coach to come on board, 5 years to get your players in place, 5 years to turn this franchise around, 5 years to get in championship mode. And all of a sudden, 2 upstarts do it in 18 months. Thus, the question that begs itself is, if they can do it in 18 months, why can't you do it in 18 months? I'm sorry, we don't have 5 years anymore. We got 2 to 3 years at most. Then John Gruden, if you may remember, almost screwed that whole thing up when he left the Oakland Raiders and went to Tampa. And within 12 months, he took that team to the Super Bowl. 31 head coaches holding their breaths to see if he could sustain that success. Fortunately, from their point of view, he couldn't, he didn't, and he's no longer coaching. For you see, the feedback that I get by fans is, oh, the game's changed. It's not like when you guys used to play anymore. I mean, there's no loyalty. I mean, people come and go. I don't even know who's playing on my team half the time. They're only in it for the money. You understand that they're only in it for the money. Change. Free agency. Well, the one big thing is that we live in a free agent society. You've always operated under free agent. Ability to come and go, move and change has always been a part of that atmosphere. But even though the game has changed, those ingredients that allow teams to succeed still remain in vogue. Those ingredients, if you take a look at championship teams over a period of time, not a Super Bowl here, not a Super Bowl there, but if you go back and take a look at the Green Bay Packers of the 60s and the Steelers of the 70s, 49ers of the 80s and the Cowboys of the 90s, you look at the Pats and the Colts of 2000, if you look at those organizations to sustain the success that they had during that period of time, you're going to find a commonality. Commonality is one. Number one, at the helm, definable head coaches, leadership. 2, people. You can't win if you don't have successful, talented people on the team. Thirdly, then you create a vision of what you want to become. Fourthly, a belief system. Now, that little concept just didn't dawn on me. I'm not that bright. Something I had to learn along the way, like a lot of us, on-the-job training through experience over a period of time. I learned it by playing with that team in Pittsburgh. For to understand success, we must understand our past and our culture. In this case, I have to take you back to 1933, 80 years ago, when Mr. Arthur J. Rooney spent $2,500 and he bought a franchise in the National Football League. And he moved that franchise into Pittsburgh and moved a Northside Sandlot football team into the fledgling NFL. For the next 40 years, it was a team destined to lose. Why? Because it had no long-term vision. It operated on short-term gains, week to week, month to month, year to year. Pass the hat to keep the team afloat, bring a marquee player every now and then just to be able to sell some tickets. It was a doormat of the league. You came, you exit through the team. Very seldom did you stay there. It was always the same old Steelers. Wait till next year. Hopefully, something will change. Actually, it was a team that took on the aura of its culture. Because if you think about Pittsburgh, you got to think about the immigrants who settled in western Pennsylvania, working the coal mines, steel mills, working the barges up and down the rivers, just tough, hard-nosed, blue-collared people, working 12, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, put a roof over their head and a meal on the table. It's kind of the team. It was like the team. It was just a tough, hard-nosed, blue-collar team. You'd come in and play the Steelers, oh, and they would beat the crap out of you. Never win, but you knew you were in a football game. Then it changed when they went outside of the organization, brought a guy by the name of Chuck Noll. Came in from a successful organization, Baltimore Colts, just had been to the Super Bowl. He played 7 years with the Cleveland Browns during championship years. What he brought was a will to win. What he had was a Pygmalion impact, helping his players reach their full potential. In short, it is called what? Leadership. For the purpose of this discussion, my definition of leadership, since there's thousands of books written on that topic, is the ability to influence. Because if you think about it, by word, thought, deed, or action, we make an impact on people's lives every day in a positive and negative connotation. You may not think that you're a leader, but you make an impact by what you say, how you perform, by what you do, by the actions you take. Now, I'm not even involved in this industry. As I walk through the trade show, you will make an impact on me. I have nothing to do with by what? By your passion, by your integrity, your commitment, your hard work to be able to bring this to a reality. Now, leadership was later redefined when I was in the Army by a grizzly old drill sergeant who loved to give little one-on-one chats whenever he had the opportunity. And one day before I could escape his presence, he had me spun around and pinned me up against a wall with a big burly finger stuck in my chest. And he said, Bleier, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm only going to tell you this once. When put in charge, whether it be that worthless life of yours or this detail I'm going to send you on right after I get done talking to you, and God forbid you should ever find yourself in a position to lead a squad, platoon, or company, but when put in charge by God, you take charge, and when you're in charge, have the courage to do what is right. Not what somebody else thinks is right. Not necessarily even what a superior thinks is right, but what you think is right. Right for the time, right for the moment, more importantly, what is right for the man. Now, the optimum word in that definition, as I thought about it over these many years, that one simple word called courage. For you see, in our society, it's become somewhat of a bastardized word. We've kind of lost all sense and meaning of what it really stands for. For you see, the only way to define courage is to define what courage is not. Courage is not being a coward, obviously, and running away from your responsibilities or passing it off onto someone else. That is not a courageous act, nor is courage necessarily being a fool, running headstrong into a situation, embracing it with everything we have without knowing all the facts. But courage is really that moment in time which we take the information, we implement it to take action, to move forward, and by God, we do that every day of our life. Small decisions that we make, that you've built your air shows on, that you built your reputations on, that you built your performances on. Now, that first meeting we had with that new head coach all those many years ago, I thought was a pretty courageous act on his part. For you see, that first day of training camp, as he introduced himself to his brand new team, he said this to us. He said, gentlemen, over the last 5 months that I've been your new head coach, I've watched every film of every practice of every game that you have played in over the last 3 years. And I can tell you why you have been losing. Because you're just not any good. And by the time this training camp is over with, most of you will not be here. Oh, not that you don't want to be here, not that you're not good people, you're all good people. The problem, as I see it, is that you've just not made a commitment to get any better. You've not made a commitment to raise the standards. You've not made a commitment to excellence. And in some cases, some of you just might not have the talent to be able to perform on that level. And if you're not going to perform on that level, then I'm going to have to go out and find some people who will. So in the draft that year, he went out and got a guy by the name of Mean Joe Green out of North Texas State. Following year, went down to Louisiana, got that pretty good broadcaster, an okay actor, not a bad quarterback by the name of Bradshaw. Same year, he got a cornerback out of Southern University by the name of Mel Blunt. 71, went up to Penn State, got a linebacker, Jack Ham. 72, same school, teammate, running back, Franco Harris. 74, 2 receivers, Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, got a middle linebacker out of Kent State by the name of Lambert, and a center out of Wisconsin by the name of Mike Webster, just to name a few. But a few who now all reside in the National Football League Hall of Fame. Because people with talent, definable talent, raises the standards for the rest of us and make us better teammates, better coaches, better owners. Oh, but talent alone can't do it, as we well know. I mean, I can have a room full of talent. I can have an air show full of talent. But it really takes leadership to be able to pull it together, to mold it, to attune it, to get it moving in one direction. It really takes leadership to define the talents that we bring to an organization, because we all have a talent of one nature or another. As much as things change, some things don't change. One of the things that does not change is that people do not change. We can educate people, we can teach people, we can show them what needs to be done, but the core essence of who they are, how they operate, basically does not change. They have strengths and they have weaknesses. So in a compressed society, free agent as it may be, trying to get more out of people in a shorter period of time, we do not have time to try to change people. The best that we can do is identify those strengths, support them as we best possibly can, manage around the weaknesses to move forward. Prime example, our illustrious quarterback, Mr. Bradshaw. The #1 pick of the NFL draft, as I had made mention all those many years ago. The forerunner of the young quarterback today, and I say that in all honesty because he was a big man back then, some 40 years ago, 6'3", 225 pounds. He had that all-American look coming into the league, blonde hair, blue eyes. Oh, when he had blonde hair. Strong, agile, mobile, the ability to throw a football 80 to 100 yards with the flick of his wrist. Think about it, you're the head coach. You have to take advantage of what he has to offer. Strengths. Weakness. Not real bright. Oh, man. Well, how do you manage around that? One tack Chuck took was through self-esteem, and he took him aside and said, Brad, let's put things in the right perspective. You've been a quarterback all of your life. Think about it. Pop Warner, junior high, high school, college. Oh, and you can become a quarterback here in the NFL when you decide you want to become that quarterback. I will teach you how to read defenses. I will show you what plays to call, but you have to make the decision that you want to become that quarterback. And when you do, young man, you'll be on that field. When you do, you will take charge. When you do, you'll run that offense. More importantly, when you make that decision, you will call your own plays. Now, if there's one aspect of his career, both on and off the football field, that he is most proud of is the simple fact that he called his own plays. If you get to Canton, to the Hall of Fame, underneath his bust, there is a bio. And in that bio, that one line will just jump right out at you, for it states very boldly, and I called my own plays. Now that simple thought has been reinforced not only in his mind, but in the mind of the public from the day he retired to this current football season. For you see, on some given Sunday on Fox, whether it be pregame or halftime, the host of the panel will bring up the topic of the young quarterbacks today and how difficult it is for them to make that transition coming out of college. Why? Because players are bigger, they're faster, defenses are more complex. Howie Long will jump in, and give a very erudite response. Jimmy Johnson will come from a coaching perspective, but what they're looking for is the man who's actually been there. What they're looking for is a quarterback himself, and so as the camera pans the panel and Bradshaw comes back into view, now there is a little gleam coming off that chrome dome. And his answer is, oh, you guys are right. I mean, those young quarterbacks today, I don't know how they do it. I mean, guys are huge, they're big, their defenses are more complex than I've ever seen. But I'll tell you one thing, as much as this game has changed, I will tell you one thing. That young quarterback today does not call his own plays. Call me an old guy, call me a dinosaur, make fun of me, I don't care, guys. At least I called my own plays. Roger Staubach, as smart as that man is, did not call his own plays. I called my own plays. Now, what he does not tell you is that we only had 4 plays. 2 running plays, 2 passing plays. He did a wonderful job, mixed them up. Got us 4 Super Bowls. So one of the things I come to learn even from that experience is this, that in a changing, complex society, obviously, in which we live and operate, don't make things more complex. Simplify the methodology so that people understand what we're trying to get accomplished, so they get on board that much sooner, and we can move forward in this changing environment. And the winds of change were in the air under Bradshaw's leadership, and I have to tell you that. And one of the changes was a culture change. As we well know, I mean, football has become a culture unto its own. Why? Because it's the only time during the year that we, as mature, responsible adults, can once again reverse back to being adolescents. I mean, it's a good time. We get to go to games. We wear our colors. We paint our faces. We yell. We scream. We got beer cans growing out of the side of their heads. Oh, it's a wonderful period. It's a culture. Now, inside the game, as we well know, for those who have played, there are subcultures. There's an offensive culture and there's a defensive culture, two separate cultures within this game of football. In an offensive culture, one of the things that you are taught from the day you put the pads on to the day you take them off, no matter what level it may be, that in an offense, there is only one person that speaks. That is the quarterback. He calls the plays. The rest of you remain silent. Don't confuse the issue. Just think about your responsibility. Think about the snap count. That simple thought is reinforced, as I had made mention, week after week, month after month, year after year, level after level. So you get a young quarterback coming out of college, and all of a sudden he's inserted into the program game, whether he's ready or not. What does he believe? He believes that he needs to lead this team, that he needs to call the plays. Bradshaw felt the same thing, same way. It finally changed, not right away. Took him 5 years. It was in 1974, if I may take you back. It was towards the end of the season. We had a crucial game. As we well know, momentum is very important at this time, pulling everybody together as we finish out the season going into the playoffs, hopefully. We had a slight lead. It was 3rd down and short, 3rd and long, 3 short 4, as the announcers like to say. No timeouts left. And we had to pick up the 1st down to be able to keep the ball and hopefully win this game. Now, right before that, Bradshaw got in a heated dialogue with one of the defenders. In the meantime, the official picked up the ball, set it down, and started the play clock. So by the time Bradshaw got back into the huddle, the play clock had already started ticking down. Now he had to decide which one of those 4 plays to call. To complicate matters, we had 4 different formations in which we could run one of those 4 plays. Simple mathematics, it was a 16 combination. And with the play clock ticking down, all of a sudden it became an overload for that little pea head of a brain. And panic started to set in. I could tell he was sweating profusely. And we started to stutter. I knew we were in trouble. And at that moment of no return, when he needed to make the call, otherwise we're going to be penalized and take us out of the position to pick up that 1st down, at that moment of no return, he looked up at his offensive line and he said, "What do you guys want to run?" I have to tell you in all honesty, people, I'm not that kind of person, but at that moment I was quite offended. Why? Well, because I'm standing right next to Brad. As John had made mention, a Notre Dame grad. I think I'm a pretty smart guy. Did he go, "Hey, Rock, I need a little help. Can you give me an idea?" No. Franco Harris is standing on the other side of him, Penn State grad, pretty smart guy. Did he go, "Hey, Franco, any suggestions?" No. At that moment, without thinking, his first reaction was to ask his offensive line. Now, not to take anything away from any former offensive lineman who may be sitting in this audience this morning, but ladies, just to put things in the right perspective, as an offensive lineman, you get hit on every play. How bright can you be to put yourself in that position? And yet he's asking them what they want to run. Amazing thing took place. They all stood up at once. It was like years of repression falling off their shoulders. Their eyes became big, their jaws dropped open, their tongues loosened, and what spewed forth were things I had never heard of before. About, "Brad, we got it right here. We got a double team. We got a slide. We got a pick. We can run it right up the middle. Let's go right." Bam! And we got the 1st down. And let me tell you this, would not be the last time Brad would go to the well whenever he got into trouble. Because at that moment in time, all of a sudden that offensive line became part of a solution rather than participants in a game. And there was a buy-in. Because when you get people to buy in on all levels of what you're trying to get done and accomplish, and all of a sudden that vision becomes much more flexible on how you're going to attain it and how you get there. But it wasn't always that easy, not to begin with. Under the leadership of that new head coach, that first year, when you go 1-13, let me tell you this, there's not an immediate buy-in to him, his success, his dreams, or his vision. Why? Because reality takes over. Self-preservation becomes number one. The thought process from the team perspective is this: they can't get rid of all of us. They do need somebody to be able to play this game. So we'll just kind of ride this baby out, as we've done over the last 40 years, until you get a new head coach or a new general manager. But when you start to win, and you win some more, all of a sudden there's a synergy that takes place. And by 1972, first time in that history in 40 years, did we get to the playoffs. And it was during the playoffs, it boils down to one play. 40 years ago, December 23rd, against the Oakland Raiders, there were 28 seconds left on the clock when a deflected pass was picked up by Franco Harris, and he scoots 55 yards down the sidelines to beat the Oakland Raiders in a playoff game. And it'll go down as one of the all-time great comebacks, affectionately known in Steeler history as the Immaculate Reception. And as we rushed down that sideline to congratulate Franco on what he had just accomplished, we did what everybody has done from the beginning of time and will in eternity, given that same situation. We jumped on top of him, of course, and then more on top of us and more on top of them, and there's this huge pile. It was like the football god finally changed. We finally won a big game. And hope was in the air. And as I make the transition, because the one business that we are in, no matter what we may do, whether it be play the game, football, or run an air show, is that we're really in the hope business. Because no man is an island. We didn't get to where we are today by ourselves. We got here because of someone, something, an opportunity, coming together. We got here because of a parent, a coach. We got here because of a teacher, a drill sergeant. Somebody opened the door, kick us in the rear. We got here because of a mentor. And all our lives are built on hope, and is the essential part of what keeps us going. Hopefully we've got a great air show hopefully we can win. Hopefully no one gets hurt. Hopefully everybody shows up. Hopefully it'll be the best ever. And all our lives are built on hope. But hope's got to start somewhere. That little kernel, that little belief that we can accomplish the big things down the line. And mine, started, and I have to tell you in all honesty, with the greatest football game I ever played in. I was 9 years old. I was playing Dickie Weisgerber, my next door neighbor. As I'd made mention, born and raised in Appleton, Wisconsin, football was a big part of our lives. For us cheeseheads, I mean, there's not a lot to do up there, except wait for the air show when the spring comes. Dickie and I had an extensive schedule. We had home and away games. Now, this particular Saturday afternoon happened to be a away game for me, so of course I had to go across the street, pick up Dickie, and play in his side lawn. But let me tell you, what a game. What a game. I scored 51 touchdowns that afternoon. I gained a little over 500 yards rushing. More importantly, I shut him out. I mean, the sucker didn't score. And I knew I had his number. And it was the beginning, for me, of a belief system. Now, just because the fact Dickie was 5 shouldn't take anything away for my personal achievement. You didn't know Dickie. He was a big 5. He was a tough kid. And I grew up across the street from Dickie. I grew up in a bar, a neighborhood shot in a beer joint, so we lived above it, called Bleier's. And I met a lot of great people who walked in those doors and sat on those stools across from my father, but also met a lot of would'ves and could'ves and should'ves, as we all have in our lives. You know, Rock, I could have played, but I blew my knee out in second grade, and I just never responded. Should have played or would have played. And there's always reasons why sometimes those childhood dreams didn't come to fruition, but hopefully what we've done is be able to learn from those experiences and use them as stepping stones to propel us in a new and different direction, and not live in the past of what would have, could have, or should have happened. And I say that only because of the fact that Dickie and I competed, throughout that grade school and junior high period of time. And I have to say, in all honesty, that he never gave up. He never quit. His dream was someday that he was going to beat me, as we talked about it years later, and my responsibility was not to allow that happen. But we competed as we moved along. And we went into high school, and all of a sudden, one of the things that I learned, ultimately, was that it was always one person, a coach, a leader, a mentor, that could pull together a group of individuals. And as they molded that team of individuals, the success of the whole elevated the individuals within that group. And you get recognition for your contribution to that success. And because of that, I got a chance to continue my education. As John had made mention, went to the University of Notre Dame. And because of one individual, new coach that came at that time, pulled together individuals, mold them into a team, we won a national championship. And because of that success, I became captain my senior year, and I got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I was not their first selection. I know that probably amazes you. I did not make their top 10 list. I was the 417th person picked in the draft that year. I was a 16th round draft choice. But you have to understand, at least from my point of view, there were 17 rounds. Hey, at least I'm not the last guy picked. You know, I might have a chance to be able to make this team. People said, well, how'd you make the team back then? Do you remember who played for the Steelers in the 60s? That's how come I made the team. Because nobody can remember who played for them at that period of time. And I played 12 games out of 14. Actually, 11 games out of 14. I was getting ready for my 12th game. And it was a Wednesday. It was offensive day. I was in my locker. When all of a sudden, one of my teammates hollered, hey, Bleier, there's a letter over here for you. Now, every locker room is the same. There's a table somewhere in the middle in the corner where all the fan mail is dumped. Now, it was a place I'd never stopped at, not when you're the 417th person picked playing on a losing team and playing special teams. From the day of training camp throughout those first 11 games, I never stopped there because nobody writes. My mother never even sent me a card. And so all of a sudden he said, there's a letter here and it's my first piece of fan mail. And I don't know how it happened, and I have to tell you in all honesty, all of a sudden I appeared in front of that table. And I looked down and I saw the envelope. And I saw my name. All I did was see my name and it was pulsating. Rocky Bleier, Rocky Bleier, Rocky Bleier, Rocky Bleier. Oh, very nervously, I reached down and I picked it up and I opened it up and I pulled the slip of paper out and I unfolded it and it said this. Greetings. We'd like to inform you that you've been inducted into the armed services of your country. And it was my draft notification to report in 24 hours. In 48 hours, my world was turned upside down. Went to basic training, advanced infantry training. Went home, said hi, goodbye, flew over the Pacific and landed in South Vietnam. For those who lived through that period of time, a lot of perceptions were taking place, not only on the home front, but on the war front. What was happening, bring the boys home, stop the war. No, allow us to fight and allow us to win. Allow us to have our dignity. 4 months later, we were on patrol. And we ran into an ambush. The deal was, we were to go back and retrieve bodies that we had left behind 2 days earlier. When a sister company had been hit, we pulled front and rear security. On our way out, we ran into a small ambush, had to leave the bodies. Now we're coming back. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Find our location. Moved out on an open rice paddy. I was 8th in line carrying a grenade launcher. Guys, word was keep 5 yards of distance between one another. Keep your ears and your eyes open. I mean, the enemy, obviously, as we well know, they're around. As I stepped out in the open rice paddy, all of a sudden our point man, who was now maybe 40 yards in front of me, saw movement across the berm and hollered out, gook, gook, and shots broke the stillness. They started to run. He pulled, as they ran, he pulled us all out in the middle of that rice paddy when a machine gun started to level the area and bodies were flying left and right to get out of the way. Everybody went to the right, I went to the left. 4 guys were pinned down. Saw the machine gun, my responsibility, carrying a grenade launcher, get firepower on that position. Crawled to the edge of that rice paddy, saw the 4 guys, saw the machine gun, breached a grenade when all of a sudden I got hit for the first time that day. AK-47 pierced through my left thigh. Discharged my round, dropped behind protection, got enough firepower to stop the machine gun position. 4 guys who were pinned down, got out of there. Medic and I crawled back to our commanding officer, who's now 40 yards behind us. We set up another defensive position. 20 minutes later, the rest of the platoon came crawling in on their hands and knees, filled with mud and muck from those rice paddies. When all of a sudden we saw a grenade come flying through the air and hit my commanding officer on the back. Didn't go off, but it bounded towards where it was in a matter of seconds. Before I jumped, it blew up, and I was standing on top of it and blew up through my right foot, knee, and thigh. And again, we're another firefight to a sister platoon, fought its way down and dragged us out of there. 6 hours later, we got to a security area. Helicopters came in, took us to an aid station, took us to Da Nang, went to Tokyo for 2 weeks before I came back to the States, spent 9 months in the hospital, went through 3 more operations. But there's always turning points, as we well know, within our lives. In Da Nang, before I went to Tokyo, just out of the field, as I made mention, with an IV running in and out of my body, morphine drip. All those questions that we have when things aren't going well, of why me, now what? I mean, I had something, where's my future, come running through my mind. But across from me was a young soldier who was a triple amputee. Lost his left arm and both legs, and every day, at least while I was there, the aides would come in and he'd grab that little trapeze and he'd swing his torso as best he could into his wheelchair. He would take him to therapy, and he'd stop and he'd make a point at every bed to say hi. And he got to mine and said, hey, how you doing? You know, you look better today than you did yesterday, because let me tell you, yesterday you looked like crap. Now, we got some good docs here, and they're going to get you out of here, and I'll see you back in the real world one of these days. And I thought, wow. I mean, if anybody could be embittered with their lot in life, would be that young soldier having lived with those atrocities that took place thousands of miles away, but yet he chose to make a difference. Yet he chose to have a positive attitude, and I thought, wow. I mean, if he could have an attitude given his condition, what about me? I'm going to walk out of here someday. I got to Tokyo, as I made mention. Still that driving force of wanting to know what my future was going about. I finally had a pretty good rapport with my physician. I asked him, I said, Doc, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think I can come back and play this game? Now, his response to me was something like this. He goes, don't worry about it. You're going to have a normal life. You're going to be able to do the things that normal people do. Just don't expect to get back in that gridiron. He said, because of the fact you just won't have the strength nor the flexibility to do the things that are necessary to be a running back in the NFL. For you see, what he had formulated from his point of view, from his stream of information, correct or not in his diagnosis, was a perception about my ability. And as my authority figure, he just sucked that hope right out. 2 days later, could have been 3, I got a postcard in the mail. A simple postcard, had 2 lines on it, said this: Rock, team's not doing well, we need you. Art Rooney, owner of the team. Wow. Somebody needs me. More importantly, somebody has an interest in me. And I came back. And being the family that they are, they bought me a year that first year. Put me in injured reserve. I had another operation. Came back the following year. Opportunity exists. I made the taxi squad 1 step up over injured reserve. But it bought me 2 years. 2 years to get healed, 2 years to get better, 2 years to get stronger, 2 years to be able to come back and play. In 1972, I came back. Leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Thank you very much. Good enough to make the team. Didn't carry the ball thereafter. Played special teams. Hey, but that's better than the year before. Things are a little bit brighter. Had the immaculate reception, as I talked about. Wow, things were in the air. Came back in 1973. Now bigger, stronger, faster. Leading ground gainer once again during the exhibition season. Got to carry the ball once during that season. But all of a sudden for me, 1973 became a turning point. Because of a perception that I had, that the coming year, that the running backs were already predetermined, the starters, the backups were already predetermined. You ever been in that situation where everybody knew they were going to come back, but for you to be able to make the team, you're going to have to fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie once again to be able to make the team? And I didn't think it was fair, not that you didn't have to work for a position, but I didn't think it was fair that the starting running back who was going to be given the job the coming year was on injured reserve in 1973. He wasn't the leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. He never even carried the ball once, but he was going to be given the job on potential. And I didn't think it was fair. And at the end of the season, I left the team. I didn't quit. There's a big difference. Why? Because we're not taught to quit, are we? No, I mean, our society doesn't teach us to quit. Our parents didn't teach us to quit. Coaches don't teach us to quit. No, we're not taught to quit. We're taught to rationalize. That's what we're taught. We're taught to repress our feelings. We're taught to think. What's happening here? I don't know. You're going to make the team? I don't know. What does it mean? I don't know. I mean, they're not talking. I understand that. I don't know. Maybe it's a sign. Oh, we're big on signs. Yeah, maybe it's a sign. Maybe you're right. I mean, I didn't quit. I mean, I did come back. I did make the team. I did get a chance to play. I got my pension in. You know, maybe it is a sign that my life's going in another direction. And so I left. Now make sure you read the fine print of any contract you sign. In the NFL, it's implied that sometime in your career, you must sell life insurance. So anyway, I was fulfilling that part of the obligation. I was working out of an agency in Chicago when I got a phone call from a teammate of mine who was coming to Chicago, big sports dinner, Boys and Girls Club of Chicago, sponsored by the NFL. Guys are coming in from all over the league. Why don't you join us? Hadn't seen you since the end of the season. It'd be great, get back together again. I'm not going back to the team. I disassociated myself. I politely declined. He pushed. I declined some more. He pushed some more. I declined harder. He pushed harder. Then he asked me the question, why? I really hadn't come to terms with why. I like to repress that. And finally I said, I don't know, I quit. I'm not going back. Well, he said, you can't quit. He said, if you quit, just think about this. If you quit, what you've already done is that you've already made a decision for that coaching staff. He said, now, do you like them well enough to make decisions for them? He said, no, your responsibility to yourself, if this is what you want to do, is that you come back and you make them make a decision. You give them every reason to either keep you or release you, but God, you don't cut yourself. I mean, the reality of this game is that we're all expendable. The reality of this game is that we all can be cut at any time, but if this is what you want, then you don't cut yourself. Whew. Maybe it was just the arm twisting I needed, and I went back, and everything that I had perceived, did take place. And I had to fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie once again to be able to make the team. Leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Thank you very much. Now, I tell you that in context only because one of the things we love to do as human beings, is that we love to project our successes. We love to extrapolate our successes. What we've done one quarter, one period, one day, 1 week, we go, oh, if I can do this every week, oh, if I can do this every month, if I can do this every quarter, wow, look at what we can do. And we have their money already spent and it's already gone, and because we love to do that. We love to be able to project. But they had to keep me. And as I tell people, I was and the reason was, so this was the point, and the reason was that I was thinking, well, I could gain 1,000 yards. Obviously, I've been the leading ground gainer over the last 3 weeks. I mean, so, you give me the ball 5, 6, 7, 800 times, I'll get you 1,000 yards. I mean, that's no problem. And I don't understand why I'm not playing more. When it finally dawned on me that the reason that I was a leading ground gainer wasn't because I was bigger or faster than the other running backs. It was because of the fact that I played more than anybody else during that period of time. I carried the ball more than anybody else during that period of time. Given those two simple statistics, I better be the leading ground gainer during those period of time, because all they were providing for me was an opportunity to be able to make this team, and they had to keep me. And as I tell people, I was the 5th running back out of 4 at the beginning of that season. But in the first game, unbeknownst to us, our starting fullback, Franco Harris, gets hurt. The backup now becomes the starter. I become the backup to the backup. Wow, I had not been there before. And all of a sudden, your spirit rises. A little more emphasis. That first game, second game, third game, fourth game, right before the half, the backup gets hurt. And I'm inserted the game at fullback, along with my running mate, a guy by the name of Preston Pearson, finished his career with the Dallas Cowboys. But Preston breaks run 43 yards down the sidelines, and he scores, gives us a lead. We go on a halftime. We go over assignments, adjustments. Who's going to start the second half? I'm thinking to myself, maybe those guys that got you the lead in the first half. So Preston and I get to start the second half, and as a team, we win the game. Everybody's still kind of banged up, so we get to start the following week. And we win that game. And the week thereafter, it's a Monday night game, an extra day of healing. Franco now becomes healthy. Damn. Oh, but that's okay. At least I got a chance to play, show, prove what I could do. We had our pregame meal, and after we have our little breakout groups, all the running backs together. We go over last-minute assignments, some adjustments. Coach gives us the first 3 plays of the game, just in case Bradshaw should forget, so we can remind him of what they are. And he looks around the table and he said, Franco, you and Rock will start tonight. Momentarily, I was quite confused. I didn't know how we both could play the same position at the same time. When it finally dawned on me, I wasn't going to play the fullback position as I had been playing. I was going to play the other running back position. Now, what confused me was that nobody told me that. I wish they would have been better prepared going to the game. And we played that game. And we won that game. So we started the following week. And we won that game. We started the remaining part of that season, Bradshaw and Franco and myself, and we won the division. And we got into the playoffs. And we won the playoffs. And we got to the Super Bowl. And we won the Super Bowl. And we played 6 more years together. And we won 3 more Super Bowls. And in 1976, Franco and I became the second set of running backs in the history of the NFL, each to gain 1,000 yards rushing in one season. And after 12 years, I left and retired the team. Now, I tell you that whole story in context because of the fact that no matter how passionate you may be about what you do in your air shows or your performance, no matter how hard we work, how determined we may be, there are times in our lives that you question your ability. There are times in your life when you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Times in your life when you wonder why you ever got in this industry to begin with. Grass looks greener on the other side, and you want to leave, and you want to quit. Well, I suppose the moral of the story is that if I would have quit all those many years ago, I never had the opportunity to play 12 years, play in those 4 Super Bowls, or have all those memories. But the reason I got a chance to play wasn't because of my size or speed, 2 things I do not possess, but ultimately because of one talent. For you see, all those many years ago, part of that breakout group, Chuck Noll had stopped our backfield coach and said, listen, you have a weakness in your backfield. Who is your best blocker? He said Bleier. He said, then start him. One talent. And all of a sudden, that fine line of one that connected my life came full circle, much like the fine line of one of all of our lives to where we are today. For obviously, if it wasn't for that one talent, I might not have had that opportunity to start. But then I got to thinking, well, you know, if it wasn't for that one injury, we might not have got a chance to play. Or if it wasn't for Preston's one touchdown, we may never have played that second half. Or if it wasn't for that one phone call, I might never have come back. Or one postcard, one triple amputee, or one terrific game against Dickie Weisgerber. It may never have happened at all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power that we have. The power to make a difference, the power to influence, the power to make an impact. Because as William Jennings Bryan said, destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. It's not a thing to be waited for, but it's a thing to be achieved. And each and every one of our destinies, and that of this association, and your air shows, lies right there in your own hands. We can become what we want to become. So in closing, I'd like to leave you the few words that have been with me for many, many years, and they go like this. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you cannot, you don't. If you like to win, think you can't. It's almost a cinch you won't. Life's battles won't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. And you're all winners. You're here. God bless you. Good luck. Have a great conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.